have a minute, and we don't want anyone to miss out on anything you have to say. So if you don't, oh, no, we don't. There it is.
Sorry, just trying to get into presentation mode, yeah.
See, it always works when you're testing, but never when you have to actually do it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great, thanks.
Cool.
Can I go ahead, or do we want to wait another few seconds? No? Okay.
I think the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Hi, so I'm Nicole Duplessis, and I'm with the Sayan Egagassini node for offshore marine systems based in Cape Town, South Africa. And I will just be providing an update on the reform process of the Iora, which is a working group within Iora, and then also activities of the national chapter. So I'll just briefly be providing an overview of Iora, an update on the Iora reform process, feedback on the activities of our national chapter, and then these kind of upcoming activities within Iora, which I think would be quite relevant and interesting to everyone. So Iora is an intergovernmental organization. It follows a consensus-based, evolutionary, and non-intrusive approach to engagement. There are 6 priority areas, which you can see there on the left-hand side, and then the 2 cross-cutting priority areas of blue economy and women's economic empowerment. Currently, Iora has 23 member states, which is shown in the map there, and I don't know how good everyone's geography is, but all the countries of the Western Indian Ocean are Iora member states. And then there are also a number of dialogue partners, of which Germany is one. So quickly looking at the structure of Iora, the Secretariat is based in Mauritius, and this supports the specialized agencies, the functional bodies, the Committee of Senior Officials, officials from the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, and that's really where most of the discussion happens within Iora. And then the Council of Ministers, which is the highest decision-making body. It says my internet's a bit unstable, so maybe I should just switch off my video there. And then just having a look at the different working groups and core and specialized agencies, which is really where the academic input comes in. So this is just to show that currently there are core groups and working groups on all of the, really all of the Iora priority areas at the moment. And those core groups and working groups are made up of government officials from relevant departments for who those areas are within their mandate. And there's also the academic group and the business forum, which are also considered working groups of Iora, and that's to ensure the involvement of business and the research community. And then there are the supporting institutions, which is the Fishery Support Unit and the Regional Center for Science and Technology. And then also in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, Iora established a Blue Carbon Hub, which is hosted by Australia. And also just to say that Iora itself is being strengthened by the member states with assistance from dialogue partners to ensure that the Secretariat is capacitated to support these groups. And these groups also have their own work plans to develop tangible development impacts within the priority areas and the cross-cutting areas within all member states. So these groups have also had to develop terms of reference, which clarifies the roles and responsibilities. And just looking back at the Iora action plan for 2017 to 2021 on the priority area for academic science and technology cooperation, the highlighted activities on this slide indicates those objectives where the most progress has been, although it is in some respects really an ongoing process, and there's now a new action plan being drafted for 2022 to 2026. So South Africa was chair of Iora between 2017 and between 2017 and 2019. And the focus for us was really on strengthening the Indian Ocean Rim academic group. And so with the other member states, we came up with a list of reform areas that could either be addressed by the academic group or through the establishment of a reform subcommittee, as well as areas that the academics thought needed to be looked at more broadly within Iora. So looking at the establishment of national academic group and focal points, member states have been asked to provide a contact person or contact institution as an academic focal point. Not all member states have established a national academic group, and it's of course up to them if they do want to establish this. But due to, in some cases, the cost implications, this hasn't been implemented. However, South Africa has provided our model and as an example for how this could be done. On the Centers of Excellence, there's document available on what would be considered a Center of Excellence for Iora and how this should be established. University mobility hasn't really been addressed, as it's also depending on funding from member states and a funding structure for that. The special fund has been revised on the peer review mechanism and criteria for participation in the IORAG. There's information available on that. The role of the chair in Indian Ocean Studies has been discontinued, and this is now being developed into a policy and research coordinator post. And the criteria for this is still being discussed, but likely this will be an established academic from one of the IORA member states, which can be based at the IORA Secretariat for a period of 2 years and then supported by one or two postdocs. And then also IORA has also re-looked at the role of dialogue partners within the association. And we also published a paper on how we saw the reform benefiting Iora, and I'm happy to share that with anyone. And I mean, also looking at some of the sessions today, I really think that, this issue of networking and mobility is clearly, there is a strong need for us to kind of discuss that more and how this can, be implemented better within the region. And so just looking at our national chapter, as I previously indicated, we developed the structure which consisted of a steering committee, which was made up of our National Research Foundation, as well as the different government departments responsible for research and academia, as well as the Department of International Relations. And then there's a core group, which consists of 1 or 2 academic experts in the IORA priority areas. And then we asked those experts to create their own networks within South Africa that could, form a community of resource persons that could advise on and participate in the IORA activities. And then our National Secretariat supporting all of that. And as a specific outcome for South Africa, we really wanted to strengthen participation of other African member states within IORA. And so we undertook a roadshow to some of the member states, namely Mauritius, Seychelles, and Tanzania. And we also hosted special sessions at the WIOMSA Symposium in 2017 and 2019. And taking advantage of the fact that it was hosted by the University of Mauritius in 2019, we invited the then Secretary General of IORA to participate in our special session. And then promoting IORA sub-regionally is still a priority, and hence me participating in this WIOGEN event today. So after the South African chair period ended, we really went through a period of reflection on, where next for this academic group. And so we've still been supporting and facilitating academic participation within IORA. And the slide just shows some of the events. There are many more, but I really just wanted to highlight here that having our structure in place has allowed us to capitalize on having academic participation within IORA meetings. And even at the recently held 26th IORAG meeting, South Africa had a number of participants, and we also were the only speakers along with India in the discussion sessions. And so this really allows us to have greater exposure of our academics within IORA and within the region. there is still a need to better incorporate the activities between the Iora academic group and the other working groups. But I do think that this is happening as Iora is looking at having more measurable impact within the region, and as all the structures within Iora start implementing their work plans. So I just wanted to highlight that there are a number of reports, project reports and other resources that have come out in the past few years. And the recommendations from these have been taken up within Iora. And most recently, there've been the technical reports that were funded by France, and looking at the outcomes or recommendations from all these resources. If anyone would like to approach Iora for project funding, having this background information available, where you can say that, you know, there have been these recommendations or identified needs for the region, it's more likely to be funded through the Iora Special Fund. And so, yeah, I just wanted to show this upcoming funding call on COVID-19 and climate change through the current MOU between Iora and GIZ Germany. India, as the current chair of the IORAG, is currently drafting the application criteria. And so this is really just to show everyone that this is, and make everyone aware that this will be coming out soon. And possible topics there include what were the climate change and environmental related impacts resulting from the COVID measures taken by the governments of the Iora member states, or impacts on tourism, ecosystem health, or air quality. It's quite broad, I think. And then also to promote the upcoming 8th Indian Ocean Dialogue, which is happening on the 15th of December, with discussions around e-health, e-education, digital technologies, and digital shipping, smart ports, and trade. And if you would like to participate, for non-South Africans, you'd have to contact your focal points. I'll only be able to facilitate South African academic engagement within that. You can also contact the Iora Secretariat to find out who your focal point is. And so I think that's really building on what happened in the IORAG meeting and what is happening within the other Iora working groups. And just yesterday, I was made aware that there's actually going to be a workshop on developing a plan of action on climate change within Iora. And that's supposed to happen, I think, within the next 2 weeks. I've asked for clarification on participation limits, as it was indicated that academia and civil society will be able to attend and participate. And so I'd just really like to thank the WeUrgent team for providing me with a platform to provide feedback, and to thank everyone for listening. I really hope that you find this information useful. And if anyone would want to be added to our South African mailing list, just to be aware of what is happening within Iora, I might not be able to facilitate you to participate in every event, which you'd have to, you know, contact your own national focal point for. But there are other open workshops which anyone is allowed to attend. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Just for everyone, particularly the South Africans, Nicole is wonderful at sharing information about what's happening in the region. And so I highly recommend that you join her network, because it's a great source of what's going on. Does anybody have any questions? You can raise your hands if you have any questions. Otherwise, in the meantime, it's great to have you here as Iora. It's really, I think it's really important for all of the different networks that are happening in the region to be communicating effectively and making sure that there isn't duplication of efforts and people are working together. And so it's wonderful to have you present and have you involved. And obviously, you're involved with Iora ISA too. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions or would like to get in touch with Nicole going forward, then feel free to contact her or put your questions in the chat. And we only have 1 minute until Cecilia, so I think we can ask you to start sharing your slides.
Just Thank you, Shannon. Let me go ahead and do that. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Okay, yeah. Wonderful. Very audible.
So now let's see if we can get some visuals as well.
Always welcome.
Are you seeing a presentation?
No? Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's better to rather err on the side of having extra time.
Yes, it's not a very long presentation either, but good afternoon to all of you. My name is Cecilia Torres. I'm a program coordinator at Blue Action Fund. I'm saying hello to all of you right now from Berlin, Germany. So first and foremost, thank you to the organizers of this very exciting event for the opportunity to say a few words. More than a real thematic presentation, what I want to share with you today is a little bit more of an announcement, a timely one, which hopefully could be of interest to many of you Western Indian Ocean experts as it relates to a current opportunity for funding. So over the next couple of minutes, I will walk you through a quick presentation about who we are, Blue Action, and about this specific call for proposals. Let's see, okay. The Blue Action Fund is a relatively new independent foundation. We were only established in 2017 under German law, and we're based in Berlin. We are financed by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, in conjunction with the KfW Development Bank, as well as the Swedish Ministry for Foreign Affairs and the French Agence Française de Développement. As of 2020, we also receive financing from the Green Climate Fund, which I will tell you a little bit more about in a minute. Our aim is to enhance the management and use of coastal and marine ecosystems, to conserve marine biodiversity while improving the lives of local communities, thereby contributing to SDG 14 of the 2030 Development Agenda and to Aichi Target 11 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We approach this objective by providing financial support to NGOs who are working in developing countries to promote the establishment and the improved management of marine protected areas. We work exclusively through calls for proposals, and these are traditionally focused on a specific region of the world. We work primarily, but not exclusively, with large NGOs, and that's because given the public source of funding, we do have a significant amount of paperwork and internal capacity requirements. However, most projects bring together a consortium of local and regional partners, which often includes multiple small local NGOs and civil society and universities, etc. Also important is that all projects have to be in line with national and regional policies, and they have to be endorsed by the relevant national authorities. And again, as I mentioned before, we support only projects that do both establishment or improvement of MPAs and which support sustainable livelihoods. At present, we have 16 ongoing projects that are pretty spread out over the Eastern Tropical Pacific, Eastern and Western Africa, and Asia Pacific. Among those are 6 projects in the Western Indian Ocean at the moment. We are also concurrently in the process of finalizing agreements for projects from the first call of proposals focused on ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change in the Western Indian Ocean, which again, I'll tell you a bit more in a minute. And we are also concurrently in the process of reviewing concept notes from our most recent call, which was focused on the Atlantic coast of Africa. So as I mentioned, we have also received financing from the Green Climate Fund, 30 million euros, which is complemented by an additional 25 million euros of co-financing from the BMZ to focus explicitly on ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change in the Western Indian Ocean. I'll say EBA for short in the remaining of the presentation. We held a first call for this program in 2020. The call was focused geographically on 4 countries, Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, and Madagascar. During that first call, we received 21 concept notes, which were evaluated, and a few of those were invited to submit full proposals. At the moment, 6 of those are in the final stages of revision before grant agreements are hopefully signed in the coming months. And these projects roughly amount to some 30 million euros. which means that the program now is going into its second call for proposals, which has a funding envelope of roughly 20 million, more or less. The call was launched just recently in September during the IUCN World Conservation Congress in Marseille. And the countries of implementation of this second call are the same as in the first. So that's to say Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, and Madagascar. The deadline for submission of concept notes is December 10th of this year. A little bit more about the call. This EBA funded program is focused on three central goals, if you will. The first of them is the protection and sustainable management of coastal ecosystems, which are particularly relevant for climate change adaptation. So that's measures such as, for example, improved management of protected or locally managed areas, or measures to reduce physical damage or pressure or land-based stressors to coastal and marine ecosystems. That's sort of the first pillar. The second one is the rehabilitation of degraded coastal ecosystems, again, those which are particularly relevant to climate change adaptation, with measures, for example, such as the restoration of mangroves or coral reefs, or the rehabilitation of seagrasses and beach vegetation. And thirdly, the third pillar is the enhancement of knowledge, expertise, and capacity of the relevant national agencies to use EBA approaches for climate resilient coastal zone management. And that's through activities such as awareness raising, capacity building, experience exchanges, and lessons learned from the practical implementation. So basically, projects are expected to work in close coordination with the national authorities so that the best practices can be fed back into national policy development and can be integrated into future national adaptation plans. So that's a little bit about the thematic direction of the call. In terms of who we fund, it is expected that this work will be financing work by NGOs who have proven experience on the ground and in the countries of implementation, not only in coastal and marine conservation, but also on the livelihood development side. NGOs who can provide match funding, including in-kind contributions of 25% in the case of Mozambique and South Africa, and 10% in the case of Madagascar and Tanzania. And finally, who have experience implementing projects of this scale. And again, I say NGOs, but I'm referring to a consortium in many cases. As for the projects that we are inviting to be submitted, they should ask for a Blue Action contribution of somewhere between 2 and 5 million euros. They must be able to be completed in 3 to 4 years. They have to have a minimum target of 5,000 direct beneficiaries and address an area of 1,000 kilometers squared of protected areas, either planned new MPAs or existing ones. It is expected that the projects must make a significant contribution to ecosystem-based adaptation in terms of the objectives that I mentioned in the previous slide. And they are expected to be in line with the national and regional policies, including climate change policies and priorities, in particular the nationally determined contributions and the national adaptation strategies. And with that, I just will wrap it up by inviting you to learn more about the call on our website, where you can also find grant procedures manual and more information about what's expected of these projects. And of course, if you have more specific questions about the call or about the eligibility of your organization or a project concept that you have in mind, then we invite you to get in touch through the email address here, or I can put mine directly on the chat if you have more direct questions. So with that, thank you all for your attention, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, and hopefully people are feeling inspired to apply, and what a great opportunity. So thank you for sharing that with us, and I hope everyone benefits from going and having a look and thinking about what opportunities are available. Does anybody have any questions for Cecilia? You can raise your hand, or, well, I can't actually see very many videos right now, so raise your hand with the reaction, or you can put a question in the chat and we can ask questions that way. I've also shared the link for the Blue Action Fund in the chat. If you want to find out some more information about it, you can just click on that directly. And I have, during the last couple of presentations, shared a couple of links for just some online networking. We realized that it's tricky to get to know each other on these online platforms. So we've made little walls where you can tell us about your ocean governance dreams, research dreams, and maybe there's opportunities for collaboration with some other people who share your dreams, or maybe the opportunities to put together a funding application with the Blue Action Fund, or other opportunities like that. And we've also opened a wall where we're asking you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, get to know each other. It's open to you as you wish, and we're really excited to take it beyond just this presentation Zoom platform and have a little bit of interaction as much as possible in these virtual spaces. So please do head along to those Padlets and let us know a bit more about yourselves. I don't see any questions for Cecilia. There's a thank you though, so that's nice.
Thank you.
Cool. So if there are no questions, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing in the region. And I think we can move on to Joshina. So it's a little bit of a different change in theme, but this is something really topical and really interesting and current. So looking forward to hearing from you, Joshina.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
We can, but you're not in presentation mode yet.
All right.
Great, perfect.
So hi, everyone. I'll be presenting today on the compounding impacts of COVID-19 and the Wakasha oil spill on coastal communities in the Republic of Mauritius. The oil spill incident happened in August 2020, so last year, while we were just out of our first COVID-19 lockdown, and we were still having the after effects of the pandemic, such as like closed borders. So we were already affected by the loss of tourism, but at the same time, the oil spill happened on top of that. So this study will look at how these compounding stresses affected coastal communities. This is relevant for Mauritius because we have a total land area of only 790 square miles, but Mauritius has a jurisdiction over a maritime area 1,000 times larger than its landmass. So it's very important to draw the right lessons from this incident to make sure that, if there's any future cases like that, how we can react better, how we can make sure that we, are better prepared in the future. So we are a small island nation of 1.3 million people with around 1,900 registered small-scale fishers. So when the oil spill happened, which released 1,000 tons of fuel oil over 30 square kilometers of the coastline, it affected an area which was highly dependent on both tourism and small-scale fisheries, and around 631 registered fishers were affected, but there's a higher number of unregistered fishers who also depend on fisheries in that area. So this is what it looked like the day after the oil spill, but thankfully now the cleanup operations have been completed. So why was this oil spill significant? As I mentioned already, so we've had around 1,000 tons of oil which spilled over the southeastern coastline of the island. This is the first oil spill since a new type of low sulfur fuel oil has been mandated by the IMO. The location of the oil spill is also important. It happened around the concentration of nature reserves and ecologically sensitive areas. And there's a particular high dependence of coastal communities on marine resources in that area. So the methods that we employed are household surveys. So 792 were deployed across 12 village council areas impacted by the oil spill. These are the ones which can be seen in the figure here. And we also included 4 reference village council areas in the north and northwestern part of the island. So these are the ones that were affected by the COVID, but not the oil spill. To complement that, we also conducted 22 semi-structured interviews with key informants and 7 community meetings, as we can see in the picture here. So I'm just going to present the key preliminary results today. So when we go into like decrease in earnings per household, we can see that communities were impacted by COVID-19 across all villages, but they were showing signs of recovery before the oil spill. So so the top line shows reference sites where we can see a slow rate of recovery, whereas the oil spill site, we can see a demarcation where the oil spill eroded the resilience of these vulnerable positions so that they couldn't recover at the same rate as the reference sites. We also asked respondents to what extent they felt affected by COVID-19 and the oil spill. So for COVID, 72% of respondents from the oil spill sites said they were very affected compared to 22% in the reference sites. And that's also because respondents along that area are also highly dependent on tourism. So when we lost that the international tourists, a lot of livelihoods were already affected, and on top of that, we had the oil spill. And then we can see the difference here as well, where 59% of respondents from oil spill sites said they were very affected by the oil spill incident, as we expected, compared to only 1% in the reference sites. Here we look at the different employment sectors. So the areas most affected by the oil spill, and we focus just on the spill sites here, are the fishing and gleaning sector, and also people employed in irregular daily labor. And I will be focusing on the small-scale fisheries component more specifically for this presentation. So we observed that there's a higher percentage of respondents with fishing as primary livelihood in the oil spill sites, which is important because for months after the oil spills, fishing was not allowed in the lagoon. There was like a graduated reopening of the lagoon areas for small-scale fishing to be practiced again. So in terms of the fishers we surveyed, there was a mix of registered and unregistered fishers across different age groups. So we asked all respondents, irrespective of the profession, what's the frequency of locally caught seafood consumption before March 2020, so before the first COVID lockdown and the oil spill. And most of them had responded that they consumed locally caught seafood more than once per week. So when that source of food was not available after these incidents, there's also been serious concern over food security in that area. So we asked them about change in consumption from COVID-19, and we can see that there's been an important decrease in the oil spill sites. Again, because during the lockdown, fishing was not considered an essential activity, so that was also not being practiced at that point. And with the oil spill, we can see that 82% from the oil spill impacted villages said that they couldn't, that their consumption had decreased a lot, whereas for the reference sites, only 2% had been affected. We also looked at the changes in amount of fish caught compared to the same period in 2019. So pre-oil spill, there was a decrease in the number of fish caught, mostly due to the COVID lockdown. Respondents were also asked whether the amount they had fish changed since COVID and the 2020 lockdown. And as from August, so post the oil spill, those at the oil spill sites could not fish at all, whereas reference sites experienced a resurgence which matched last year's levels, which we can see in the second graph. So almost like most people said there was no change for the reference sites. In terms of price of fish, there does not seem to be a clear pattern in the prices of fish over time, especially in the reference sites. The results here suggest that price changes were not determined by regional market forces, but they were more set by individual fishers or their middlemen. So this is something we also explored further by looking at people who could fish during that time. Where were they selling their fish as well? Another key finding was the gendered impacts of COVID and the oil spill. So we noted that unregistered female fishers, so mostly gleaners, those who were just walking and fishing, walking along the coast, collecting different types of mollusks, shellfish, they fished for subsistence. So as they are typically not registered, they did not receive much support following the oil spill. So a key recommendation from this study has been to employ a gendered approach whenever we were looking at alternative livelihood projects or financial support that were being provided to people in the oil spill impacted area. In addition to this, we complemented this study with national pulse surveys, which were done by Cantor Mauritius, which deployed those nationally. And one of the most important finding here is the fact that consumption of fish from the impacted region is considered dangerous. So 96% of respondents from this study had said that they thought it was still dangerous to consume fish, and that did not change much. So it was 88% in March 2021. So although the lagoon areas were opening up again, the perception of the public about safety of fish was still a concern, which is why another recommendation is more transparency about studies done to highlight how safe seafood consumption is in the area and what different types of species of seafood was considered for that. Lastly, we also looked into environmental perception. So we asked people how their concern for the environment had changed as a result of the spill, as well as a result of COVID. And we observed a higher percentage change in concern to care for the environment in oil spill sites versus the reference sites, interestingly, as a result of both events. And one of the reasons could be a biased response to the oil spill sites right after the oil spill, but it could also indicate a higher care or higher need for the environment and its services to communities. So when we asked them why they had, when we asked our respondents why they picked the options that they had, they highlighted that they were now able to see the vulnerability of the lagoon and connected ecosystems after the oil spill, and the need to protect them against a wide range of stresses became more apparent. The vulnerability of marine species also became more obvious, as well as the need to protect them. So respondents were able to more directly link loss of nature to loss of jobs and livelihoods. And that direct link between nature, livelihood, and food security became more established. So these are some of the quotes that came up during the surveys when we asked people about the changes in environmental perceptions and how that was impacting them. So to sum up, just wanted to highlight that there is a growing emphasis on a blue recovery as countries worldwide are aiming to recover from impacts of COVID-19. But it is very important not to think about recovery in silos. So we are not just trying to recover from COVID. There's multiple cases where countries are recovering from compounding stresses. For example, there's a combination of COVID and increasing frequency of storms, or like in Mauritius, there was COVID and the oil spill. So when we are thinking about recovery to a range of stresses, it is very important that we adopt a strong blue justice agenda, which looks at all actors. For example, here we focused on small-scale fisheries, but also at other key components such as gender equity and food security, among others, because these are all interconnected systems, and so are the stresses. So, and people are dealing with all of them at the same time. So recovery in that sense should be more holistic. So on that note, I would like to thank all the partners who helped support this study, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tashina. That was great. It was such an important topic, and yeah, I really think it is important that we start thinking about the recovery in a holistic and comprehensive way. And I think a lot of people are just trying to like get back to normal, and we need to think about what we want our normal to look like. But that's maybe a whole other conversation. It would be great if anybody has any questions. I'm sure there were a lot of emotionally involved people in the events of last year generally, and particularly with the oil spill in Mauritius. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we will call upon you. In the meantime, how are things looking now? I mean, you said that the cleanup has happened, and have there been ecological differences that are visible and noticeable now? Or is recovery happening likely?
So cleanup operations ended in January this year, and there's been ongoing monitoring of ecological monitoring. And just yesterday there was coral spawning. We observed coral spawning along the southeastern coast, which I think is a very good sign. So I think ongoing monitoring is necessary to see, to understand more on the long-term impacts. For me, the more urgent thing is the food safety and security component, making sure that people who are dependent on the marine resources they've been consuming, out of options, they've been consuming food from that area. So it's very important to ensure that this is safe, and that small-scale fisheries as a whole is also not affected. So really looking at both the social and ecological impacts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's going to be, unfortunately, a big long-term experiment, but one we would all rather hadn't happened. Yeah. Are there any questions? Yeah, I'm trying very hard not to just like bombard you with my own questions, because I'm hoping to get some other voices in. And I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, Mauritius is one of my favorite places. So it was completely heartbreaking to watch this all happen last year. So it's good to hear that there's continuing monitoring and work, and hopefully some ecological recovery, and some hope for the communities that are reliant on the system too. So
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, if there aren't any further questions, I'm going to say thank you very much, and it's wonderful to see you again, and that was a great presentation, so thank you for joining us and sharing that with us today. Next up, I believe, is Rebecca. So Rebecca is joining us from ZMT, but we're going to pretend that that's not important today because she's really one of the team of the region coordinating team. So we'll put that as your main affiliation today, if that's okay.
And I hope you bear with me. It's the last presentation of today. It has been so packed and I learned so much. And it's also nice to get a spot here to present what we've been working on in the last weeks and months. You can see my presentation now without my my notes. That's great. So as Shelley mentioned, my name is Rebecca Lahl, and I'm heading the Office for Knowledge Exchange at the Leibniz Center for Tropical Marine Research in Bremen. So we're a research institute that works entirely in tropical countries. And today I'm, in the name of my co-authors, Sebastian Ferse and Marie Fujitani, I'm presenting a guidance that we wrote for planning and conducting a co-design phase. This guidance was commissioned by the German development organization GIZ for the Mehr Wissen initiative. And the Mehr Wissen initiative supports African-German research partnerships. They've just launched a call for nature-based solutions, and we'll hear more about that tomorrow morning when our colleagues from GIZ will officially launch the second day. Now, you may be asking yourself, why the emphasis on co-design? What is co-design? What do you mean by it? And also, how can you plan and implement co-design? So these are the questions that have motivated the development of such a guidance in conducting co-design, especially in the framework of the Mehr Wissen call. And in this session, I will introduce you to the document and how you can use it as a resource to prepare for co-design phase. You can find it on the Mehr Wissen website. I believe it's mehrwissen.de or com. Please, colleagues, can you maybe post the link to the resource in the chat? That would be great. The document that we prepared draws from diverse sources, including discussions from an online workshop that was held earlier this year. It was feedback from previous Mehr Wissen cohorts. They have been involved in a couple of co-design workshops. There are a couple of existing guidebooks for research partnerships and also stakeholder engagement. There's a lot of literature, both academic and gray from science, but also from development cooperation. Further, the Mehr Wissen community, which is all projects that are working under this funding line, have developed a discussion paper about co-design that was presented at the Nairobi Convention Science to Policy platform. So from all these sources, this guidance has been constructed with the particular context of the Mehr Wissen program in mind. But I would say that there's merit also for other applications for co-design in general, and we hope that it is of value for you. This document is to say it's a living document that builds off the experience by its users, so feedback is highly appreciated. So what is co-design? Why do we need it? And what are essential elements? So co-design is actually part of a family of concepts that are used similar to co-creation or knowledge co-production. So co-design is rather the first step in an ideal transdisciplinary research process. In these guidance documents, we focus on really the initial phase of a project process in which researchers and non-academic partners jointly develop a research project and define the research question that meet their collective interest and needs. However, though the co-design phase of the Mehr Wissen program has a clear start and end, it's about 6 to 9 months long, we like to emphasize that these principles in this guidance also be useful throughout a project life cycle. And this process of really bringing people together to design and co-create knowledge is a process that is iterative and ongoing. So why co-design? The second question, because we need a kind of science that supports societal transformation. I think that was also very well placed with the talk that Anna Katharina gave today. Co-design draws on diverse sources of knowledge and targeted co-developed lines of inquiry to be relevant to a particular context for improved policy decisions, for example, and lasting project impact. Co-design of research also aims to increase equity amongst partners and the research process, and also avoiding parachute science and strengthening local ownership. To paraphrase Moser 2016, the co-design process itself is an instrument of transformation, changing not only the research projects, but the people involved, while inviting critical reflection of the role of science in society. To achieve co-design, or to achieve all that what co-design tries to achieve, the projects need sufficient time to do it, to have resources and time to plan, to build a team that is strong, and also to engage stakeholders in developing project ideas and implementation. So here we can see the elements of co-design that were highlighted by a couple of participants of an online workshop about co-design. And we see elements such as trust, openness, transparency, communication, and respect. But how do we develop those things? This brings us to this guidance where it's laid down in more detail. There are 4 parts that we thought are more accessible and tractable. So they have emerged from the source materials, and they include a common vision and a shared understanding, stakeholder engagement, project and partnership management, and sustainability, and that is longevity of the project outcomes. All 4 parts of this guidance have the same structure, with key icons in the guidance that can help you find what you're looking for. The guidance gives each of the 4 elements a definition and describes why it is important. It then describes concrete steps, 3 to 7 steps, that breaks up the process into tangible tasks or work packages. Here we call it steps. It will also then, if possible or applicable, name concrete tools that you can apply and factor into a co-design phase. And experience from workshops or consultation and the literature we try to factor into helpful tips. The guidance gives also examples, and you can see in these blue boxes, and provides reflective questions for a research team to discuss. So with this guidance, we want to help you to structure a thinking. The 4 parts of the guidance each have a different focus. We are looking at firstly the direction or the problem of a research project. What are we working for, or where do we want to go? The second one is who and how are we want to work with? What are our stakeholders? The third one is about the partnership itself. How do we want to work with each other? And fourthly, how to create a lasting impact with the environment and society. So with this guidance, we want to set your minds for co-design and provide you with a concrete roadmap into co-design. But this does not mean that all these 4 parts are a linear process. Indeed, these steps are necessarily iterative. So we hope that this guide can boost creativity and help, for example, also in budgeting a proposal. It's also a useful resource if you're planning to submit a proposal to the Mehrwissen initiative. And now I would give you a very short overview of each of the parts. So with the first one, where do you want to go? The first part is really about creating a joint positive image of the future with your partners, and preferably also with a set of stakeholders, for example, from practice. It's about challenging your initial project idea to create something meaningful and acceptable for all. On the right, you can see an example of a tool, a participatory model that was created by representatives from different stakeholder groups in order to share assumptions of the system transparently, so it can be discussed and compared. So it's an example that we took from a stakeholder workshop. And the purpose is really to put out assumptions on how a system works and compare them. And this tool can be used to create a common vision or explore a joint vision. The second part is about stakeholder engagement. There's a lot of literature about how to plan for stakeholder engagement, and this part is really a state-of-the-art collection. And it's starting with identifying, understanding, analyzing stakeholders, and prioritizing them to plan for stakeholder engagement. So here on the right, you can also see an example of stakeholder mapping that was done within a Mehrwissen co-design workshop. The participants wrote down stakeholders and positioned them in a map, whereas in the middle of this map, the greater the importance of these stakeholders are for the project and its outcomes. The third part focuses on this, so to say, the modus cooperandi of your partnership. How can you build trust, foster mutual learning, while also making sure that responsibilities are clear and acceptable for all? So the main takeaway for me was that it's really important to schedule quality time with your partners while also stipulating rules and procedures. And on the right, you can see an example from a co-design workshop where participants defined rules for communication about giving and receiving feedback. So this is also a really simple exercise, I would say, but that can be very helpful to foster appreciative communication amongst partners. The fourth part of the guidance covers steps that you can take even before the project starts to set the course for sustainability of projects, meaning that the project outcomes are secured and have an impact, how you can address potential adverse effects on the environment, how you can support equity in your partnership, also how a fair budget can be supported, and yeah, just generally how you can share benefits of your partnerships amongst all partners. There's also an example of a little exercise that you can do to foster uptake. It's a policy uptake strategy that was created during a co-design workshop. So yeah, with this guidance, we provide a structure as a jumping off point that you can draw from your, according to your specific needs and context. And then these boxes can be filled with pictures, with your experiences, with stories. And thus we invite you to, in the future, share your lessons with us and GIZ, so that this guidance can contribute to it as a living and growing resource. So have a version 2 of this, this guidance. So now I'll thank you for your attention. I hope this was interesting to you. And I also invite you to join the parallel session, Stream 5A, Co-Design and Transdisciplinary Research, tomorrow, right after the keynote. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Does anybody have any questions for Rebecca? I have a question. Well, what have you found is one of the stumbling blocks when trying to co-design projects with partners?
Well, despite, I guess, time and resources, well, what was very upcoming again and again is communication, and just being transparent and appreciative, and always invest into communication bits, because you can, especially in transboundary projects where you have different cultures coming together, different expectations, and not laying them out clear can really lead to conflict or just hard feelings maybe. So the more the better maybe, or the clearer the better. So that was one issue that came up quite a lot.
There's a question from Christine. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Rebecca, for the presentation. I just want to ask in regard to building trust, especially for collaboration and partnership, because I've seen mostly in conservation research, most people fear to share idea, with perception that people will steal their idea and do a bigger project without their engagement. How did you find this to build trust in such an environment?
Well, I think one option to build trust is really to spend time with each other and be honest and humble. And I guess, or generally, team building can be done by sharing food or playing games with each other. And I know this sounds funny, but it really helps to build trust. And of course, what I also mentioned is the clear communication and laying that out, maybe even vested interests, and just be very clear on what your interests are. I hope this is helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
I think it's reoccurring theme through the day about the importance of clear communication, effective communication, openness and trust. And I think it's such an important thing that we really have to think about as practitioners working across disciplines and across national borders and working in such a big complex space. So thank you for taking us through that very clearly. Yeah, and if there are no further questions, there's some thank yous in the chat. But if there are no further questions, we are just about out of time from a very busy and inspiring day. So thank you, Rebecca, for joining us, and obviously we'll see you tomorrow. But thank you to all of the session speakers and all the speakers who made today so rich and interesting. The Wasia Network is all about people, and we're really honored to have spent the day with so many interesting and enthusiastic people working in the Western Indian Ocean. We, as the Wasia coordinating team, are so excited to bring you all together from broad professional backgrounds and research backgrounds to discuss such a wide range of topics, all relating to ocean governance. We're also really excited by the partners that have been so supportive of Wasia throughout the whole project, and particularly leading up to this conference. We'll obviously do an official thank you on Friday at the end of the conference, but I can't resist a quick and very heartfelt thank you to the Wasia coordinating team and our amazing management committee members for making today and Wasia in general work. We wouldn't exist without a management committee who are doing it all voluntarily and in their spare time, and some of them have very little spare time. So we're very grateful to them, and their enthusiasm and passion for ocean governance is very inspiring. So we hope that you've all explored some new themes, met some new people, learned some new facts, and felt inspired to strengthen ocean governance in the region through good science, effective communication along the science policy interface, and transdisciplinary collaboration. As Angelique highlighted earlier today, we need to take a much more holistic approach to ocean governance. So we're so excited about this opportunity to bring you all together here today. We're also looking forward to continuing the conversations tomorrow. So please join us again for another exciting day, exploring ocean governance in this very special and important region. As Jacqueline Uku said at the beginning of the day, we have to give a voice to the ocean because it cannot speak for itself. So that is what I challenge you all with, especially at this very important time with COP26 happening and so much happening in the world. And I really think we need to make the most of things and act now and try make ocean governance one of the key subjects on people's minds within this group and without this group too. So thank you, everyone. And the links for tomorrow's session are all available online. And as Hauke says, we're not done yet. So definitely come back and join us tomorrow. We have some really exciting topics and some exciting speakers and an excellent keynote speaker tomorrow. So we really hope to see you there. And it's really exciting seeing all of the people introducing themselves on Padlets, and there's some great contributions there. So please go to those links and also tell us about your ocean governance dreams. You never know, maybe two people want to work on the same thing, and this is the moment when you can find that out and put together a proposal or something. So go tell us what you want out of this conference and out of ocean governance in general. Cool. So I think that's it for today, and thank you for a really good and inspiring day. I don't know if anyone from the coordinating team wants to say anything, otherwise see you tomorrow.
Thank you, and thank you, Shannon, for great facilitation, and Letitia.
Thanks, guys. I wonder if there's an opportunity for a quick photo shoot for those people that have cameras on or camera ready and not just radio ready. It's always nice to have some faces with the names. Because I know Hannah's been
see my face. That needs to change.
No, we love your face. We love your face. And Hannah's